I had been married to Gardenia for less than a year when her Prince Charming returned to the country. She found fault with me in every possible way and even gave me an enormous surprise. "You can't give me what I want. Why can't you just set me free?" I agreed to the divorce, changed my name, started over from scratch, and 5 years later finally took my company public. To expand the business, I stepped into Cydia once again. I never expected that the moment I walked out of the company building, a little girl would suddenly hug my leg. "Daddy," she shouted. Her voice echoed through the entire underground garage. Chapter 1. The girl looked about 4 or 5 years old, not an age where a child is completely ignorant, and I was certain I had never seen her before. But there was no way I could use force on a little girl. Besides, this was the parking garage of the office building where my company was located. We had just moved in, and the entire building was full of my employees, partners, and associates. "Little one, what's your name?" "I don't have a daughter as big as you," I said, rubbing my temples. After thinking it over, I could only lift her into the car first. "My name is Vicky. You're my dad. I've seen you on Mommy's phone," the little girl said, puffing out her cheeks and looking at me with obvious displeasure. "And who is your mom?" I asked with a bitter smile. "Gardenia." The girl shot me a sideways glance, as if my question were incredibly stupid. My whole body jolted as memories surged out like floodwaters breaking through a dam. Back in college, I had secretly loved Gardenia for 3 years. She was the celebrated campus belle of G University, born into privilege, while I was just a poor student living on scholarships. During military training, I fainted from hypoglycemia. Gardenia was a year ahead of me and volunteered at the infirmary. When she handed me a tissue that carried the faint scent of gardenias, she stood against the light, beautiful like an angel. "You're awake?" she asked when she saw me staring blankly. She reached out to wipe the cold sweat from my forehead. "You're fine now. You're in the infirmary." Thank you," I stammered, then added after a pause, "Senior." It was a little ridiculous. She was kind to everyone, yet I fell for her beyond all reason. Secret love is a one-man battlefield. Just to catch a distant glimpse of Gardenia, I joined the club she was in and participated in activities organized by her faculty, but I always watched from afar, because she already had a childhood sweetheart, someone perfectly matched to her background. After graduation, with my advisor's help, my project secured investment, and I started a small tech company. Gardenia's family fell on hard times. Her boyfriend abandoned her and went abroad, and she ended up working as a receptionist at my startup. Years of suppressed feelings finally broke loose, and I began pursuing her. Then one night, after I was drugged and got drunk, she became mine and agreed to my proposal. Gardenia didn't love me, but since everything was already done, I thought we would live on like that, neither good nor bad, and that one day she might accept me. Until a year later, when Gardenia betrayed me for her ex-boyfriend. The two secretly carried on an affair, and she even leaked confidential documents of one of my company's most important projects. Not only did my company fall into crisis when the project collapsed, I myself was also accused of stealing core source code. "You took advantage of me while you were drunk. You ruined me, so I'll ruin you too." Gardenia snarled at me through the iron bars of the detention center. Even now, recalling that look still sends a chill through my entire body. I stared at the little girl who bore a faint resemblance to Gardenia, my hair standing on end. "I'm not your dad. Get out of the car. I'll have my assistant take you home, or I'll call the police to take you away," I threatened coldly. Vicky looked frightened, her big eyes instantly filling with tears, but my mind was already made up. I sent a message for my assistant to come down and take her away. Seeing that tears were useless, Vicky slowly opened the car door and got out, turning her head back again and again as my assistant led her away. I let out a long sigh and silently comforted myself. "Walter, you're no longer the Noah you used to be. You already died once, you can't turn back now." Chapter 2. My name used to be Noah. Like some cliché stories' vicious supporting character, my family consisted of an alcoholic father, a gambling mother, and a broken me. After finally getting into G University, I escaped from home and lived in constant fear, stretching every penny as if it were two. Aside from secretly loving Gardenia, I had never done anything immoral or unforgivable. That one time, though, I got drunk, and the alcohol had been drugged. I never knew why Gardenia appeared in my room, nor did I have time to figure out who had slipped something into my drink. Before that, Gardenia had always responded to my pursuit with indifference. No matter how I explained myself, she refused to believe I had been framed. Still, she agreed to marry me, even though the process was far from ideal. Even though she misunderstood me, I always believed that time would reveal a person's true heart. In public, Gardenia was always warm and radiant, like a spring breeze. Everyone who met her fell for her beauty and gentleness. People would say, "Noah, you lucky bastard." All I could do was smile bitterly. In private, Gardenia was full of spoiled rich girl temper. She demanded the best of everything: food, clothes, daily necessities. She expected to be served hand and foot. and the financial pressure on me was immense. And because I felt guilty toward her, I never talked back no matter how she insulted me. Gradually, her verbal sarcasm escalated into physical violence. I endured it all in silence, on the surface, well-dressed and polished. Underneath, my body covered in bruises. Perhaps my submission pleased her. Sometimes, when she was in the mood, she would have me serve her in bed, but even that was never under my control. The moment she was satisfied, she would kick me off the bed, then fling contraceptives at my face in disgust. Disgusting. Someone like you would be the lowest grade gigolo there is. I felt that my sins did not warrant this kind of punishment, but what was done was done. I could only endure it. After all, when I was a child, my father would beat and scold me whenever he got drunk. Maybe I was just born cheap, thick-skinned, tough, unlikely to die anyway. When the company finally began to show some promise, Gardenia's attitude toward me softened. That day, she unusually came to my office with a bottle of wine, wearing a rare gentle expression. In that cramped office, we spent a night of reckless indulgence. A few days later, the police came knocking, saying my core code had plagiarized that of the Reyes family and demanding I cooperate with the investigation. The project collapsed, the company's cash flow broke, and it soon became unsustainable. But I wasn't completely without evidence to turn things around. The company couldn't be saved, but at least I wouldn't go to prison, just burdened with debt. Unexpectedly, when my father heard the news, he suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and was left paralyzed. My mother finally left the mahjong parlor, coming to see me at the detention center, thin as a skeleton. Mom, it's fine. He always beat you anyway. Just think of yourself as free now, I said after days without proper sleep. My mother paid no attention to my condition, only rambling on about how hard her own life had been. Noah, he's your real father. I don't care, you must pay to save him. My mother shrieked, as if I were some unforgivable villain. I said nothing. Save him? But dear mother, who was going to save me? Somehow, my mother managed to get in touch with Gardenia. Gardenia came to see me, bringing Simon with her. Chapter 3. They said that as long as I gave up any chance of turning things around, obediently swallowed this silent loss, they would give my parents a sum of money, and I wouldn't have to repay my debts either. Noah, your little company is something I can crush with a flick of my finger. Simon sneered viciously, his hand lingering on Gardenia's waist. You dared to touch my woman, this is the price. You only need to serve 1 year and you'll be out. That's already a bargain for you. Otherwise, for what you did to me, it would be at least 3 years, Gardenia said as she nestled against Simon, looking at me with contempt. Since we got married, have I ever treated you badly? Why did you betray me? I almost lost control. Like a drenched, miserable stray dog, I refused to give up the appeal, until Gardenia came to see me alone. Just give it up. People like you, no matter how hard you struggle, are nothing more than ants the Reyes family can crush by stamping their feet. If I hadn't lost my virginity to you and had married into the Reyes family instead, my family would have had a chance to make a comeback, and I could return to my old life. Now I'm pregnant. Without you, I wouldn't have ended up like this. You already ruined me. Don't ruin this child too. You can't give me the life I want. Why can't you just let me go? Gardenia rested a hand on her lower abdomen, where a new life was growing. I wasn't narcissistic enough to think the child was mine. It was far more likely a bargaining chip for her to marry Simon Reyes. In the end, unable to withstand my mother's hysterical tantrums and the blow of this unexpected pregnancy, I signed the divorce agreement, trading 1 year in prison for some peace and quiet. While I was serving my sentence, my father still died. My mother was buried under a mountain of gambling debts. When creditors came after her, she fell from a building while trying to hide and died, with no one to claim the body. The call had no choice but to go to Gardenia. After I was released, I tried to ask about where my mother's ashes were. All I got in return was her mocking reply that they had been casually dumped in a trash heap, followed by a curt demand to never contact her again. I was left utterly alone. I changed my name to Walter, believing everything could start over. I never expected the sudden appearance of that little girl to throw my life into chaos all over again. Fortunately, after arriving in City A, work piled up quickly. Before long, I forgot about Gardenia and the little girl, throwing myself completely into my job. Boss, my assistant knocked on the door. Come in. What is it? I lifted my head from the mountain of contracts, praying she wasn't bringing more paperwork for me to sign. You don't have to look at me so resentfully. I don't want to work overtime either, she said. My assistant's name was Luna. She was a classmate from the same year, and she'd followed me ever since I first started my business. Back when I changed my name and moved to City C, I ran into her by chance while she was visiting relatives. That's how we ended up working together again. Haha. Was it that obvious? I laughed dryly. Luna shrugged. It's not about work. The little girl from last time slipped into the company. She's too small. No one noticed her in the chaos. She's waiting in the meeting room next door. I'll handle it. I sighed and stood up, walking toward the meeting room. Vicky was sitting there obediently, drinking the children's milk Luna had given her. I never quite understood why Luna, already 27 or 28, liked drinking children's milk so much. Daddy, Vicky called out when she saw me. Let's get this straight first, I'm not your dad. I cut in quickly. Now then, can you tell me why you sneaked in here? Mom isn't home. I was hungry, Vicky said, sounding aggrieved. Then why didn't you call her? I asked. Mom, she doesn't like me calling her. She's with Uncle Reyes. Vicky lowered her head. Her little fists clenched tightly around the hem of her clothes. Uncle Reyes, Simon Reyes. Weren't those two already carrying on together long ago? Then why was Vicky calling him uncle? After all these years, had they still not gotten married? The very next second, I felt disgusted with myself. Whether Gardenia was married or not had nothing to do with me. If you're hungry, you should go to a restaurant, not interrupt my work, I said, my mood sour and my tone heavy. I'm sorry, Vicky burst into tears almost immediately. Today is my birthday, but Mom went to keep Uncle Reyes company. I don't have any money, and I was really hungry, so I came to look for you. I noticed her clothes were actually a bit dirty. Her shoes had a hole in them. Only her braids were neatly done, tied with a stitch hair tie, Luna's favorite. Gardenia never watched anime. The braids were probably redone by Luna, who must have felt sorry for the little girl. Come on, I'll take you to buy a cake, then I'll send you home, I said at last, my heart softening despite myself. Okay. Vicky stopped crying and carefully took hold of my hand. Chapter 4. Vicky was very well behaved. I took her to a random dessert cafe, and she obediently sat there eating cake. I couldn't help thinking of Gardenia, not because I still had feelings for her, but because it all felt strangely unreal. This was the child she had given birth to, the little one who had already changed my life before she was even fully formed. Did I hate Vicky? Maybe I did. Perhaps the very first second I saw her, when I realized she was Gardenia's child, I felt disgust toward this little girl. But by the second time I saw her, I had already begun to let go of that feeling. What a cute little girl. Are you out playing with your dad? The server carried our cake up to the second floor and teased her warmly. Shoo, he's not my dad, Vicky explained. Before the server started treating me like a human trafficker, I chose to pull out my business card and point to the office building across the street. Sorry, I am her father. She's throwing a tantrum. I scared her by saying I didn't want her anymore. And now I've been stripped of my parental status. Ah, here's my card. I work across the street. Sir, no need to be nervous. You two look so alike, it's obvious you're father and daughter, the server said with a smile. I felt a bit awkward and sat back down sheepishly. Uncle, what's your name? After a while, Vicky had eaten her fill and looked at me timidly with those big eyes. My name is Walter. Then are you really not my dad? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sorry, but legally speaking, I don't think I'm your father. But just now, your mom should have taught you not to go with strangers, or you could be kidnapped and sold. Of course I wouldn't sell you, but I also don't want to be mistaken for a human trafficker. So yes, I lied, but that wasn't right, and you shouldn't learn from it. I racked my brain trying to explain myself, while Vicky just blinked at me with her big eyes. Indeed, even though I had tried my best to ignore this fact all along, Vicky only resembled Gardenia in her eyes. Everything else about her was practically a carbon copy of me. Simon was mixed race. Vicky didn't resemble him at all. Biologically speaking, I was probably her father. Uncle, lying is a skill humans must learn in order to survive, Vicky suddenly said very seriously. Why? I asked, confused. Because Mom says so. Especially men, if they don't lie, they can't survive at all, Vicky replied. This is insane. What on earth has Gardenia been teaching you? I felt a headache coming on. I'm done eating. Thank you for spending my birthday with me. Uncle, I won't bother you at work anymore. Bye. Vicky shrugged, hopped off the chair, and was about to leave. No, wait, where are you going? I called after her. Home. Of course. Otherwise, where am I supposed to sleep tonight? Vicky shot me a look as if I were an idiot. I'll take you. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Vicky was Gardenia's daughter. If I took her home, I would definitely run into Gardenia. Damn it, I shouldn't be swearing in front of a child. But honestly, this whole situation was completely screwed up. After a full 30 seconds of inner struggle, I still put Vicky into my car and drove toward Gardenia's place. Uncle, you look really nervous, Vicky said. No, Uncle's just a bit tired. I'll take you home, and then we probably won't see each other again. I wish you a happy life in the future. Vicky, I admit I was nervous. The thought of facing the woman I once loved deeply, who had betrayed me just as deeply and left my life in total shambles, made every part of me feel wrong. Yet whether by luck or misfortune, I didn't see Gardenia. Bye. Uncle, I'd really like to invite you in for some tea, but I can't lift the kettle, Vicky said as she opened the door. The messy, desolate interior was fully exposed. My emotions churned. This was the apartment Gardenia and I once shared as our marital home, one I hadn't claimed during the divorce. I never expected her to still be living here, And I certainly didn't expect it to look like something barely better than a landfill. Are you often home alone? I should have turned around and left, but I couldn't stop myself from asking. Yeah, Mom says no, but I think her boyfriend doesn't like me. So when she goes to be with Uncle Reyes, I stay home by myself. Vicky nodded. Walter, you're a complete idiot. I cursed myself inwardly, then rather rudely stepped into my ex-wife's place and began cleaning up the mess. At the very least, a little girl shouldn't be living in an environment like this. I was doing this for the child, absolutely not because I still cared about Gardenia. Chapter 5. When we first got married, I bought an apartment behind my parents' backs and put it under Gardenia's name. Ha! Such a tiny 2-bedroom. And you think this is enough to please me? Gardenia rolled her eyes dramatically when she moved in. Sorry, but at least this way we don't have to pay a mortgage, I said awkwardly, rubbing my hands together. The marriage had happened unexpectedly, and I hadn't had much time to prepare. Other than this apartment, we didn't even have a proper wedding. Oh, Gardenia snorted angrily, then stuffed all her luxury clothes and handbags into the closet in one go. Before long, the closet was full, so the guest bedroom became her walk-in wardrobe as well, because she didn't want to share a bed with me, and the guest room was piled high with clothes and bags. I spent most nights after marriage sleeping on the living room sofa. Later, about half of her clothes and bags disappeared. Then the living room got a new Italian designer leather sofa, paired with wool cushions and several fluffy throw pillows. Such tasteless junk. Only furniture of this quality is worthy of me, Gardenia said proudly, chin raised, without explaining where her clothes and bags had gone. So my sleeping spot was upgraded, from a cheap fabric sofa like something out of a model home to an expensive couch worth about a third of the apartment itself. A startup company is always busy. Sometimes I was so exhausted that I didn't even bother to eat dinner. I just collapsed into sleep the moment I got home. Although Gardenia worked as the receptionist at my company, she always clocked out on time and never waited for me. But she never skipped a meal. Even if I was so sleepy my eyelids were fighting each other, she'd still kick me awake and make me cook dinner. If you starve to death, that's your problem. I still need to eat, Gardenia said, rolling her eyes again. But I'm really tired. Can you stop bothering me and just order takeout yourself? I snapped irritably. Half asleep, one of the rare times I lost my temper with her. You've got some nerve. How dare you yell at me? Gardenia glared angrily. But even when she was mad, she was still beautiful, and I'd never been able to resist her. And honestly, in my heart she was always a pampered young lady who had never lifted a finger. So I dragged myself up obediently and efficiently cooked a meal that looked good, smelled good, and tasted good. Not that I was bragging about my cooking skills. Gardenia was just extremely picky and hard to please. She ate very little and refused leftovers, so I usually ended up finishing most of what she left behind. If your crappy little company goes under, you could probably still survive as a chef, Gardenia said. It won't fail. This project has great prospects. Don't worry, one day I'll definitely get you a bigger, better place to live. I smiled. Let's hope so, she replied, her expression a little strange. At the time, I didn't pay attention to that odd look. After all, even though she had a bad temper, I could still feel that somewhere beneath her actions, changing the sofa, forcing me to cook and eat, there was at least a trace of concern for me. She didn't love me. When we first slept together, she cried bitterly. I had thought about turning myself in if she truly couldn't bear it, but after she finished crying, she still agreed to marry me. So for her to do even this much was already pretty good. I was even a little grateful for someone like me, who came from a deeply dysfunctional family. Being able to have a home at all felt like a dream. Isn't marriage like this? A man and a woman, not perfect, but manageable. As my company got busier and busier, Gardenia also started disappearing more often. Sometimes she wouldn't come home all night, and when I was frantic with worry, she'd soothe me gently. Honey, I'm just out having fun with my girlfriends. Don't be mad, Gardenia said in a coquettish tone. It sounds pathetic, but back then, I really was completely wrapped around her finger. After closing a major deal, I excitedly bought her a gold necklace. But that night, she still didn't come home. Why do you never come back anymore? I sat guarding the gift and the roses all night, and finally couldn't help questioning her. What? You suspect me? Who do you think you are? Telling me where I can go? Don't forget your place. Do you really think you're qualified to interfere in my business? Gardenia snapped, clearly in a bad mood as well. We had a massive fight, mostly Gardenia yelling at me. My form of resistance was moving into my tiny office to live. Of course Gardenia didn't care. I just couldn't stand facing that empty apartment alone anymore. Who would have thought that the first time she ever lowered her head to appease me would also bring with it the bottle of alcohol that completely destroyed me? Chapter 6. After cleaning up the apartment, I had already skipped work for a full half day, and it was dark outside. Luckily, Gardenia's habits hadn't changed much. I managed to find Vicky's clothes without much trouble among the piles of clutter. After making sure she could shower by herself, I had her wash up properly and change into clean clothes. Then I opened the fridge and threw away more than a dozen eggs produced 16 months ago, moldy broccoli, and expired chili sauce. After that, I went downstairs to buy fresh ingredients and came back up to start cooking. Uncle, you're amazing, Vicky said, sitting at the dining table and praising the longevity noodles I made. Am I? I smiled bitterly. This was a skill I had learned for her mother. Yeah, Mom's cooking is always terrible, either way too salty, or she uses sugar instead of salt. Vicky pouted like a little adult, her face full of disdain. She used to be a princess. She doesn't know how to cook, I said. Princesses can know how to cook too. That just depends on whether they want to. But my mom, she really can't cook, Vicky said with great seriousness. Eating still doesn't shut you up. Hurry and eat, or it'll get cold, I said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Just as I was about to eat the other bowl myself, there was suddenly a click at the door. The door opened. Mom. Vicky jumped off her chair and ran excitedly toward the entryway. Get lost. But the voice that came first wasn't Gardenia's, it was a low, male voice. A voice I would never forget in my lifetime. A voice that made my teeth itch with hatred. Uncle. Uncle Reyes. Vicky's voice trembled, tinged with tears, as she awkwardly backed away from the doorway. You scared Vicky. My anger shot from the soles of my feet straight to my head. I strode over in a few big steps, blocking the entryway and glaring at Simon Reyes. Hey, you. What was your name again, Noah? Simon was clearly drunk, and he had the unconscious gardenia slung over his shoulder. Walter, I replied coldly. TCH. Simon didn't care. He sneered and tried to push his way inside. Forgive me for being blunt, but you don't seem very welcome in this house, I said, refusing to budge, staring straight into his light green eyes. And what the hell are you? Beating you up back then wasn't enough, and you still dare show up here? Simon grabbed Gardenia's face and forced her head up. Gardenia, your charm really hasn't faded. This guy came crawling back to you again. Huh? Gardenia was forced to look up, her consciousness not fully awake yet. That face, I had thought I would never forget it for the rest of my life, but at this moment, I couldn't recognize who the person in front of me even was. She was painfully thin, her face covered in gaudy, heavy makeup, yet it still couldn't hide the swollen, bruised cheeks and the exaggerated dark circles under her eyes. G.A. Gardenia. I froze. This was nothing like the proud, beautiful Gardenia from my memories. Heh, Simon sneered. What? Happy to see your old flame. You want to sleep with her? Perfect timing. I'm already bored of her. 1 million. I'll sell her to you. That's enough. Put her down and get out, I said, covering Vicky's ears. Otherwise I'll call the police and report a drunk driver who's also trying to harm my ex-wife and my daughter. Simon laughed lightly. He didn't push it further, tossed Gardenia aside, and left. Uncle. Uncle, what's wrong with Mom? Vicky's little face was soaked with tears as she clutched my clothes in panic. Don't cry. Don't cry. Mom's sick. Uncle Reyes brought her home. Now let's take care of her together. Okay. I took a deep breath and tried my best to stay calm. Okay. Vicky was very sensible. She could tell I was lying, but she was a little girl willing to tolerate a man's lies. So she obediently went to get a damp towel and gently wiped Gardenia's face. After removing her makeup, I finally confirmed that this person really was Gardenia. She didn't look like she was living well. Someone who betrayed me living badly should have been satisfying to see, yet I didn't feel happy at all. There was only one thought in my mind. If she looked like this, what kind of life had Vicky been living? Children fall asleep early. After coaxing Vicky to sleep, I sat alone on the sofa, the same one I had slept on for an entire year, waiting for Gardenia to wake up. You're not planning to do a good deed anonymously and then quietly leave, are you? Gardenia sighed, no longer pretending to be asleep. We need to talk, I said, looking at her, surprised to find my heart utterly calm. She's your daughter, Gardenia said, looking straight at me. You might not believe it, but she can only be your daughter. Simon has azoospermia, he can't have children. What exactly are you trying to do? Of course I could tell Vicky was my daughter. Fine, I'll admit it. I deliberately let Vicky see your company and then go look for you, Gardenia said, running her fingers through her hair, adjusting the gold necklace around her neck, then pulling out a cigarette and lighting it. Smoke curled through the air. She was still breathtakingly beautiful, no longer like a blooming gardenia, but like a rose already rotting at the edges. So you want me to acknowledge the child? I thought there was something wrong with me, yet I still picked up the ashtray and held it out for her. Yes, if she stays with me, she'll be ruined, Gardenia said with a miserable smile. Didn't you say back then that staying with me would be what ruined her? I mocked. My fault, Gardenia said calmly. I'm sorry. I don't accept it, I replied. Then it seems there's nothing left to talk about. I won't see you out. Gardenia shrugged, apparently unbothered by my refusal. I don't accept your apology, but the child can't stay with you anymore. Say it. What conditions do you want? I didn't move, staring straight at her. Walter Lin. Your new name sounds nice. Why Lin? I remember your mother's surname was Liu, Gardenia said, changing the subject instead of answering. After I got out of prison, my mentor actually contacted me on her own. She said she believed in me and supported me starting over. So when I changed my name, I used her surname. Gardenia nodded. She slowly finished her cigarette and stubbed it out. Tomorrow morning at 10. I'll bring Vicky's documents. You bring your household registration booklet and ID. We'll meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. That's it. I frowned. That's it. Her name is Vicky. Surname Song. You can change it to Lin if you want. Gardenia shrugged. I hope tomorrow will be the last time we ever see each other. Of course, I said. I stood up, straightened my slightly rumpled suit, and left that house. I didn't ask about the injuries on Gardenia's body, nor about her life over these past years, because aside from that lovely little girl, our lives no longer had anything to do with each other. Hopefully, the next separation would be a permanent one. Goodbye forever to the woman I once loved deeply, hated deeply, and now no longer cared about at all. Goodbye, Gardenia. Chapter 7. At 10 o'clock the next morning, I waited at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau as agreed. However, even after the staff went off for lunch at noon, Gardenia still hadn't shown up. Damn it. I returned to my car, my chest filled with anger at having been toyed with. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Luna. Hello, I answered, rubbing my temples wearily. Boss, something happened. You need to come to Gardenia's place right now, Luna said urgently, hanging up before I could ask for details. I rushed back to Gardenia's apartment. Police tape had been set up at the entrance. The door was wide open, and the place was packed with people inside. Hello, Mr. Walter, correct? A police officer walked over and gave me a salute. Yes. Sorry, what happened? And where is my daughter? I nodded. Vicky was soon brought over. Without saying a word, she threw herself into my arms. Here's what happened, the officer explained. Someone reported a fire alarm, saying smoke had been coming from the kitchen. When we entered, we found that the little girl was hungry and tried to cook but didn't know how to turn off the stove. However, during the investigation, we discovered her mother in the bedroom. She had already passed away. The preliminary cause of death is a drug overdose. Her relatives have been notified. The child called your assistant, MS Luna. After she arrived, she said you are the child's father, so we asked her to contact you to come pick her up. I understand. Thank you. May I take the child with me first? This place isn't really suitable. Of course, but please don't leave City A for now, and keep your phone on. Holding Vicky, I left the residential building with Luna, pushing through the crowd of onlookers. After finally getting into the car, we decided to go to Luna's place first. It was closer, and we could rest there for a bit. When did I ever tell you I was her dad? I shot Luna a sideways glance and asked. She looks exactly like you. If I hadn't known you for so many years, I would have suspected you were some kind of scumbag dad from those running away with the ball web novels. Luna said it as if it were perfectly natural. What ball? I didn't understand. Running away while still pregnant, Vicky added. It's a kind of online novel. Vicky, you're not allowed to read that kind of messy nonsense anymore. I scolded her, feeling unsettled. Gardenia was dead. How did this happen so suddenly? And how was I supposed to explain this to Vicky? Auntie Luna, where's my mom? Sure enough, Vicky asked about Gardenia. Didn't I tell you already? Mom went to be a detective. We can't disturb her for now, Luna said as she brought us back to her home, a cozy little place. 3 bedrooms and a living room, with 2 cats inside. Oh. Vicky didn't ask any more questions and went off to play with the cats. Luna looked rather proud. She said it herself, kids were always distracted by cats, especially hers. They were bold, loved people, and got along extremely well with children. Boss, you sit with Vicky. I'll go cut some fruit. I was deeply grateful. Luna was incredibly perceptive. She could tell I needed time to think. Uncle Walter, my mom is dead, right? Vicky suddenly asked. You? No, she's just tired. I froze, unable to react in time. No one stops breathing when they're just sleeping. I saw her this morning. Don't worry, I already knew what death was when Grandpa passed away. But, you're not my dad, and my mom is dead too. It feels like no one wants me anymore. Uncle Walter, you should find me a decent orphanage. Vicky's eyes were red. The words she spoke were heartbreakingly mature. My voice caught. I am your dad. I'm sorry. Last night, your mom and I already talked it through. She was supposed to bring you to see me today. I was just about to. Tears slipped down uncontrollably. In a world where I thought I was completely alone, there was still a child connected to me by blood. I was so close to taking her away, letting her live a carefree life. So why did life still have to make her go through all this? Vicky, listen to me. I was your mom's ex-husband. We separated because of relationship issues. Back then, I didn't know you existed. It's not that I didn't want you. How could you possibly be a child nobody wants? Your mom hoped that you could live with me. What about you? Would you like to come live with Dad? Dad, Vicky said softly. I feel like crying a little. Can I cry? I miss Mom. Yes, of course you can. I held my daughter tightly, my heart feeling like it was being carved apart. By the time Luna came back from cutting fruit, Vicky had cried herself out and fallen asleep in my arms. I found this at Gardenia's place, Luna said, not bothering to comfort me, and casually tossed me a USB drive. Inside were records of how the Reyes family had framed Gardenia's company back then, along with evidence of Simon Reyes forcing young female employees, dealing drugs, running illegal gambling, and organizing group sex. Gardenia had been deceived by him and hadn't lived well, but she had deceived Simon too, one piece after another. There was even complete evidence preserved for my own case from back then. Sigh. Of course. That included the video of the chaotic night we spent together in the office. Wow. Luna raised an eyebrow. Didn't expect that. You're pretty impressive, Walter. Shut up. My face burned. I couldn't understand how Luna, a woman, could be even calmer than me seeing this kind of thing. What are you blushing for? At least now you've got evidence to clear your name, don't you? Luna smiled with an unmistakably suggestive look. What's the point of reopening the case now? Using this kind of video as evidence, I'd rather let my reputation rot in the ground forever. I snapped angrily and closed the video. There was one last audio file left in the folder. Without thinking much, I clicked it open. Are you crazy? You want me to drug Noah? Gardenia's voice came through. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Find a male escort to go in and have his way with him, and I'll get your dad out on bail. Simon's vile voice followed. Simon, he's just my junior from school. I'll get you the code you want very soon. Why do you have to target him like this? Baby, he liked you back when he was in school, didn't he? Men understand men best. I know exactly how filthy his thoughts are. I'm abroad right now, so you'd better stay well away from him. All right, I understand. I couldn't listen any further. My mind completely crashed, no thoughts left at all. So what happened back then was designed by Gardenia. Why? Just because I had a crush on her? What did I do wrong to be toyed with like this by someone named Reyes, and by Gardenia? Simon, go to hell, I roared. Chapter 8. Gardenia never liked Noah, from beginning to end. At first, the one she liked was her childhood sweetheart, Simon. But to Simon, women were no different from clothes. After Gardenia's company was swallowed up by the Reyes group, Simon Reyes gained even tighter control over this beautiful woman. The only thing that truly irritated him was this: during a bidding war, the Reyes group lost to a small company. That poor, pathetic man, who always looked at him with those disgusting eyes, actually ended up riding over his head. Simon was driven mad by jealousy. He ordered his girlfriend to get close to Noah, seduce him, drug him, just to toy with this young man. But soon, he realized that Gardenia hadn't followed his plan. Instead of destroying Noah outright, she had slept with him herself, and even married him. Gardenia, how dare you? Simon roared. Why wouldn't I dare? Gardenia said coldly. I don't trust you. Unless you come back to the country and marry me, I won't help you. She didn't like Noah. She was just using him. But Noah was genuinely good, so good that, without realizing it, Gardenia began to care about him in a twisted, awkward way. Even though she didn't like him, even though she was still in love with Simon Reyes and dreamed of marrying into the Reyes family, even though she had harmed him, still, the moment she found out she was pregnant, she decided to give birth to the child, this child who carried half of Noah's blood. Simon, as expected, did not keep his promise, but he also refused to let Gardenia go. At the very least, with Simon's help, Gardenia managed to get her father out safely. So she raised the child while remaining Simon's mistress. That dangerous man both loved and humiliated her. Gardenia always wore the necklace she had retrieved from a trash bin. She didn't know why. She suspected it was karma for betraying someone's sincerity. It wasn't until her father passed away that she finally felt there was no point in continuing to entangle herself with Simon. But she still had a daughter. Fortunately, at that time, the man who had changed his name to Walter returned. Vicky, look, this is Daddy, Gardenia said gently, holding the little girl and pointing at the spirited man on the screen. I have a dad. Will he like me? Vicky asked, confused. He will. It's because I knew he would like you that Mommy decided to give birth to you, Gardenia replied. Gardenia didn't like the man named Noah. He was capable, and he was kind, but there was always a deep-seated inferiority about him. Something that seeped out from his bones. The kind of inferiority brought on by a broken family, clinging like a parasite. The men she liked were bold and radiant, like Simon used to be. Noah was too cautious. She had never truly taken him seriously, but Gardenia felt that she had, in fact, fallen a little for Walter. They met again after 5 years of separation, in the marital home he had once given her. For the sake of a little girl he had only just met, Walter sat across from his enemy and said calmly yet firmly, "We need to talk." No shouting, No tearing each other apart. No accusations. Just a discussion about the child's future. He had long since stopped caring. He was still kind, like the morning sun. And so, at a moment when the ground was littered with the ashes of past harm. At a moment after she had betrayed and lost him forever. At a moment when he had been destroyed by her, only to be reborn. On the last night of her life, wearing the necklace he had given her, Gardenia fell in love with Walter. Chapter 9. With sufficient evidence in hand, I took Simon to court on the charge of being suspected of murdering my wife, Walter, formerly known as Noah. The judge glanced at me, clearly confused. With all due respect, you're already divorced. Your divorce certificate is right there in your evidence bag. Oh, yes, I replied calmly. At the time, I ran into some trouble. I divorced her so I wouldn't drag her and the child down with me. But now, I'm planning to remarry, to give the child a complete family. I lied without even blinking. All right, the judge shrugged. In truth, the charge I brought did not stand. Gardenia's death was ruled an accident. However, the crimes Simon had committed were supported by overwhelming evidence. Prosecuted by the authorities, he would never be able to turn things around in this lifetime. My name was finally cleared. Riding that momentum, I secured quite a few new clients and successfully established myself in City A. As for Gardenia, I neither wanted nor needed to sue a dead person. She had betrayed me, but she was also the child's mother. I didn't want Vicky to grow up believing that her mother had been a bad person. Vicky once said something very true: adults need lies, because in the adult world, things are rarely simply black or white. Some things, once they pass, should stay in the past. I also didn't change Vicky's surname. Her mother raised her and loved her. She would always deserve her daughter to carry her name. Vicky, my daughter, please take care of me in the years to come. All right, I take that back. After raising a little girl on my own for a full year, I realized that children are truly the most difficult beings in the world. Sometimes I genuinely want to pry open her little head just to see what on earth is going on inside. Auntie Luna, I think there's no man in this world who can't be won over by a candlelight dinner. My dad is obviously the type who was betrayed and is just waiting for the female lead to heal him. Trust me, once he feels the warmth of a home, he'll definitely fall for it. Vicky was wearing a delicate little dress, her two small braids bouncing up and down as she gestured animatedly, looking ridiculously cute. Vicky, you're not allowed to read novels anymore. I was so embarrassed my toes were practically digging into the ground as I scooped her up. Dad, you have to move on. You don't need to stay single just because of me, Vicky whispered in my ear. It's okay. I'm not a 5-year-old kid anymore. I'm 6. I can accept Auntie Luna as my new mom. My heart melted completely. Even though I had originally come to question her about why she hadn't properly finished her kindergarten homework, no matter how childish it was, she still ought to do it properly. Sorry, Luna, for making you help pick up the kid, I said, smiling at her. It's fine. So, do you want to come over to my place and have a candlelight dinner? Luna shrugged. What? I froze. She's asking if you want to go to her place for a candlelight dinner and confess your feelings. Vicky rolled her eyes and repeated impatiently. By the way, the flower shop is still open. You can buy a bouquet of roses before you go. I like yellow ones, Luna added. Oh, okay. I nodded, my ears burning slightly. All right then. I'll go eat dinner at Grandpa Han's and Grandma Wang's place. Vicky spread her hands helplessly. You have to write. I know. I'll do that childish homework. Bye Dad. Bye Auntie Luna. Vicky jumped down from my arms and skipped off toward Luna's parents, exactly as she had planned. In that case, I said, bending slightly and extending my hand in a gentleman's bow. I think we could go on a date before dinner. What do you think, Vice President Luna? Of course. Luna raised an eyebrow and placed her hand in mine.